Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth Maschke. Today I'm also representing my partners Sophia Goodson and Griffin Raber. We could not find a time that worked for all of us before we left for the summer from Millersville, so I'm just doing this by myself. We selected lure number 10, which was the South Bend woodpecker lure, which was manufactured in approximately the 1920s, a little before, a little after. For design, we took measurements of these lures and we mocked them up in SolidWorks. After we mocked them up in SolidWorks, we were able to get a better version of what worked and what didn't when we used the 3D printers to rapid prototype them. Rapid prototyping on the 3D printers allowed us to see everything that needed to be changed, what worked, what didn't work, which was super helpful to visualize for anything that was needed to go further with in the project. In order to manufacture these lures, we ran into a lot of issues. The main issue being that the lures have we named it the hat. The lure's hat has an interior cut, which is really, really difficult to manufacture if you do it in just one clean operation. So our solution, after weeks and weeks of trying to figure out the best solution between ourselves and Dr. Johnson's help, we wound up manufacturing these in two sections, the hat section and the body section. For the hat section, because of the interior cut, we had to manufacture a specific tool for the hat, a specific cutting tool, in order to get that interior piece cut. We had a test cut and we had Dr. Johnson help us with it because we were a little over our heads at that point and we wanted to make sure that it turned out relatively well. And after we had our test cut and it turned out successful, we cut all of our stock to length and continued to manufacture these. We were doing these on the manual lathes in the back of the metals lab, but realized that we would have a much higher tolerance on the CNC lathes, which would increase accuracy, and we needed accuracy because all of these lures had to look uniform, or as uniform as possible. The second portion of the manufacturing process that we had to do for these lures was the body, which was a relatively simple cut. We did this again on the CNC lathe to expedite the process. After we put these on the CNC lathe, we used the mills and also in the metals lab in order to drill the holes in the bodies, which we later regretted, and I'll get into that at a later point. Another portion of the project that we had to manufacture was a drying rack for the epoxy. So it was like an epoxy curing rack that rotated on just a rotisserie motor, which is a relatively simple process. We just had Griffin mock that up for us in Fusion because we were able to use Fusion more easily for CAD and CAM compatibility reasons. So Griffin mocked that up for us because he has the most experience in Fusion, which we were able to get a CAM program from really easy. And then we took that to the CNC router in order to cut it out all nice and pretty. And I think it turned out really, really good. And it worked pretty effectively. We also were required to make boxes for these lures, which was then dropped from the project and made extra credit because we all ran out of time. So we got relatively far into that process though. We just didn't do the CNC portion, but we jointed, planed, cut to rip to the width, and resawed all of the boards and cut them all to width and length for the different sides of the boxes. In regards to finish, we had two different color paints that we used. We used, both of them were Rust-Oleum enamel paints. We used Gloss Almond for the body and Sunrise Red for the hats of the lures. How we went about getting the color on the actual lure bodies themselves were by dipping them directly into the paint can with a toothpick that was attached to one end with rubber bands on either side. And it just kind of hung and dangled, which worked really, really well for what we needed to do because instead of it all curing on one end of it, it cured on the end, like on one side of it, cured on the end of it instead and then would drip off, which is exactly what we wanted for that process. It allowed for a really smooth finish and it worked excellently for both the bodies and the hats of the lure. After we let the paint dry, we did touch-ups, and then after those touch-ups dried, we did a final coat of epoxy, which was very stressful to do because nobody in our group had done epoxy before, not Griffin or I. So we learned as we went, and we learned. We learned that it's really difficult to do and that it cures fast. In regards to hardware, we had hooks, cups, and eyelets that we needed. We ordered the wrong sizes of everything multiple times. We settled on simple hooks. We found those hooks. Those were the only piece of hardware we got right on the first try. The cups took 2 tries to get, but those worked really effectively once we got the right ones that we needed. And in regards to eyelets, eyelets were the worst nightmare for this project. We needed two different sizes, a relatively bigger and thicker size for the end, the top and bottom of the lure, so the top of the hat and the tip of the body. We also needed smaller eyelets that went into the cups on the underside, more or less the belly of the body, which was kind of difficult to do. When we added the cups in, we learned a lot of lessons in this project. We also had a lot of fun with this project. We were here till really, really early hours sometimes, but we had so much fun doing it. And it was a very valuable learning experience. And this is how we made our fishing lure, the 1920 relative era South Bend woodpecker lure, which was lure number 10, which we also called our little guy. Thank you.